Story 1. My older brother was stillborn 3 years before me. From time to time when my brothers and I were growing up, my mother would wake to a crying baby, even as we got older. She would get up to check on us, and while walking down the hallway, she would sense a kid running at her in the dark. She'd throw her arms out to catch the kid at the shoulders, and there would be nothing there. As I grew, the shoulders would get higher, as if the ghost was growing. One night, my dad and brothers were watching a movie and the crying started in the attic. Our dog freaked out and was running around in a tight circle in the dining room, looking straight up while he ran and barked feverishly. Once I got my first car, on a few occasions, even with someone in the passenger seat, I'd notice someone looking at me in the back seat. I'd look in the mirror, and for a second, I would someone that looked a lot like me sitting behind me. The last time something like this happened was shortly after my grandfather died. I was living in an apartment and recovering from a broken leg. My grandfather's favorite baseball team was the Detroit Tigers. I was watching something else, but several times that night, the TV switched itself over to the Tiger game. After a few times, freaked out, I turned the TV to another channel and turned it off. A moment later, it turned back on and changed itself back to the baseball game. Story 2. So when I was 17, I moved in with my boyfriend, future husband, his mother, and younger brother and sister. He and his family are Colombian, and at the time, his mother practiced Santeria. She had a Santeria shrine in her bedroom closet, and her boyfriend would sacrifice small animals in the garage, baby chickens, goats. He even kept a peacock in the backyard one summer to use its colorful feathers in his rituals. At the time, my boyfriend worked until 10 p.m. at night and didn't get home until 10:30, 11. His mother, brother, and sister were usually busy in the evenings with work and school stuff and didn't get home until after dark. So I was left home alone with just my cat most nights. My boyfriend and I had the downstairs bedroom, while his mom and siblings' rooms were upstairs. Every night, I would hear loud footsteps on the ceiling while in the bedroom, coming from his mom's room. I tried ignoring it, but the more I ignored it, the louder they got. After a week of the loud footsteps, the talking and laughing started. Low at first, but then every night it seemed to get louder and louder. I started to get scared and would lock myself and my cat in the bedroom until someone got home. After almost 3 weeks of this, I finally said something to my boyfriend. He believed me and told me it was the spirits his mother communicated with during her Santeria rituals. I told him it freaked me the hell out. He said as long as I stay out of her room, they won't bother me. Wrong. A few nights later, I was alone again and decided to get something to eat. The stairs leading to the second floor started in the kitchen, and when I went into the kitchen, I heard the light patter of feet. I looked over to where the sound came from and saw a small, human-like figure dart up the stairs. I ran to the stairs and saw the flurry of a white dress turn the corner into his mom's room. See, his mother had this African doll that wore a white peasant dress, and she used this doll in her rituals sometimes. Well, seeing that lit a fire under my ass. I grabbed my cat and sat in the spare car in the driveway until someone came home. His mom came home first and asked why I was sitting in the car with the cat. I told her everything and she got this serious look on her face and asked me if I followed the doll into her room. Hell no. Good, she said. I'll make sure she doesn't leave the room again. And I'll make sure she knows that she's not to harm you. Don't worry. When my boyfriend got home, I told him what happened and that I wanted out of this house. He agreed, and we moved into our place the following month. We've been married almost 17 years now, and his mother still has that doll. It sits on a rocking chair in her bedroom. Every time I see that doll, I swear it's like its eyes are following me around the room. Story 3. A few years ago, I was home alone in my basement playing video games when I heard the door that connects my kitchen to the garage creak open and slam shut, but I never heard the actual mechanical garage door open. Then I heard heavy footsteps of someone wearing boots walking the length of my kitchen, directly above me. I originally thought, oh, my brother must have forgotten something, as he had left about 5 minutes before that for work, so I was about to yell up to him to make fun of him, but something in the back of my mind was telling me, hold on. Something's not right here. So I muted my TV to both hear better and to stay quiet. Then I heard the footsteps turn around and walk back to the door, and again I heard it creak open and slam shut. But again, I never heard the actual mechanical garage door open or close. So I slowly walk upstairs thinking, maybe my brother just forgot to close the garage door. I slowly open the door to my garage and see that the garage door has been closed the entire time. The only two explanations I can come up with are either something paranormal happened, or someone broke into my house, walked through my kitchen, and left without taking anything, while also not letting me hear them open my garage door. In my opinion, both are equally terrifying to me. Story 4. There was one time when I was home alone with my roommates Kitty and Doggo, and it was around midnight. I was in my room right off the living room and the dog was in her kennel. The cat was roaming like usual. All of a sudden, the dog started barking like crazy. I figured she heard my roommates coming home, but I never heard the door open and she was still barking. I decided to go out and at least try to shut her up since we had downstairs neighbors. As soon as I reached the bedroom door, I felt an ominous feeling like I didn't want to open the door. But the dog wouldn't stop barking and growling, so I cautiously opened the door. When I opened it, I felt this blanket of dread wash over me, and something told me to not look to my right. There was just the coat closet over there and the stairs leading down to the apartment door over there. Not looking in that direction, I just looked at the dog to find she was in a very defensive position. Her chest lower to the ground and her fur slightly straight along her spine. And not breaking eye contact with the corner next to that closet I was genuinely afraid to look at. The cat was over to the left, but in a similar defensive position as the dog. Fur sticking up, tail in the air, and hissing. This cat never hisses. He also wasn't breaking eye contact with that corner. I couldn't calm them down, couldn't stop the barking, but I finally realized I just had to see what they were so freaked out about. I looked at the corner, and it was just an empty corner, but I was terrified of it. I could tell something was occupying the space, and it didn't feel friendly. I didn't know what to do, but I did the first thing that came to mind. I said, "You aren't welcome here and you're scaring the animals here. Leave now." A few seconds later, the dog finally stopped barking and the cat wandered off. I still don't have an explanation, but I'm pretty sure it was a spirit and not a good one. Story 5. I fully believe in ghosts, and my house seems to have something in it. I think the most terrifying thing that's happened was at about 3 a.m. I'm woken up by a heavy dragging sound in my living room. The door to my room is right next to the front door in my living room. It sounded like someone just horrible, dragging their feet back and forth across the carpet, and I could see the shadow going back and forth under the door, because I always keep a lamp on in the living room. I opened the door, and nothing was there. I closed and locked it, and it continued again. It finally stopped after about an hour. There was not anything I could do, so I just kept the door locked and stayed in the bed. Other things that have happened are I've woken up in the morning to all my cabinets open in my kitchen, and all of my dishes, pots, and pans were stacked smallest, the largest on my counters. There have been multiple occasions of strong scents of baby powder and baby powder being sprinkled on my bathroom floor. I don't have any baby powder at all. I've also distinctly heard whispering conversations in my living room at night that stop when I investigate and continue when I leave, and occasionally in the room next to me, something will knock on the wall that's next to my bed. The one that bothers me the most, and still happens to me every single day, is every time I stand at the oven and cook dinner, something tugs the back of my shirt down. Every day. I've even worn multiple different shirts in different styles to make sure it wasn't just me being crazy. It's even skin-right shirts. At this point, I said, "What do you want? Please stop. I'm just hungry and you're freaking me out." Story 6. I was about 21 or 22 and living by myself at the time, and I left my window open on a pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off, and I lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. Woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp, and my hand hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man in my bedroom, smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me because he leapt out my window and took off. I slammed it shut and moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, found the screen sitting against the house. Didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with a window more than cracked ever since. I also absolutely refuse to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or rape me or both, but it was terrifying and makes me wonder how many times it happened. And I didn't wake up. Story 7. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I have also lived on my own for a long time, so do not get scared easily. I had just finished reading in bed, and I turned my lamp off and settled down to go to sleep and hugged my cat up close to me. This would be about 1:30 in the morning. I closed my eyes, and I heard a voice say meow, like imitating a cat. My window was open, so I thought it was just someone being weird outside. I opened my eyes, and in the middle of my bedroom was a small boy wearing a red jumper waving his arm above his head. I leaped up like a goddamn ninja and put the light on, and my heart was going mad. Now, nothing paranormal has happened in this house, ever in the entire time I have lived here. I spent the whole night freaked out, only getting a bit of sleep when it started to get light outside. My friends thought this was hilarious when I told them. I was saying there is no way I am living in a haunted house and started Googling cleansing, exorcists, and whatnot. The next few nights, other weird stuff started happening. I started sleeping with the TV on, and as soon as I tried to get any sleep, I would hear freaky voices coming from it, or I would notice shadows dip by the side of my bed. It was dreadful. I resorted to saying out loud, "I'm really tired, so if you could not haunt me for one night, I would be grateful." I had never really believed in any of this sort of stuff before, so it was like an entire paradigm shift for me. Anyway, I was going on about this to my friends at work, and one of them asked if I was on drugs. Well, funnily enough, I had just started taking this new tablet, Montelukast, for my asthma. When I got home, read the side effects, a rare one being hallucinations, stopped taking them, no more hauntings. Story 8. This was in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. I wasn't alone, my roommate was with me, but it was still scary. We lived in this house my third roommate, who wasn't there at the time, uncle bought, renovated, and rented out to us. It was in the middle of farmlands a couple of miles from a fairly populated city. Our house had about 3 acres. About a third of it is covered in forests that extend beyond our property. In the middle of the night, I woke up to some footsteps outside near my window. I looked, saw nothing, decided it was probably an animal roaming around. Trying to fall back asleep, all of a sudden I hear the distinct sound of someone pumping a shotgun and the sound of running on our porch. I hear my roommate, "Hell fucking asshole." The boom shot goes off. I grab my shotgun and head out, go out the door to the balcony, and it's just my roommate standing there, with his shotgun looking outward in the dark. Turns out my roommate also heard footsteps and heard them on our porch. Someone was trying to break into our house and was most likely trying to find an unlocked entrance. He had fired a warning shot in the air. The criminal ran away into the woods. Out of context, it was scary as shit, but once I knew what was happening, I felt relieved to have a roommate who was vigilant. In the end, I think I asked if we should call the cops. He thought we shouldn't, but we did stay up the rest of the night watching Game of Thrones. Story 9. One night I was watching The Conjuring at home with my little sister when we heard someone putting a key into our front door and opening it. We were sitting in the living room, next to a sliding door that was very close to the front door, so we both heard it very clearly. Now, this didn't alarm us since we knew our dad had recently gone out to get some stuff, so we just assumed he had returned. "Dad, you're back already?" I casually asked. There was no response. "Dad?" I asked again, thinking that he had not heard me the first time. Again, silence. At this point, I got the feeling that something wasn't quite right, and I could tell by the look on my sister's face that she was quite nervous as well. I'll note that up to this point, she had spent the evening rolling her eyes at horror movie cliches, and she very rarely gets scared. We looked at each other for a moment, wondering what we should do before we started hearing a few more scattering sounds from right outside the sliding door. I was frozen in fear by this stage. I tried one more time in a louder but shakier voice. "Dad, is that you? Please respond," repeated in my head. But the silence continued. Now at this point I'm freaking out and I jumped off the couch. My sister also abruptly gets up and starts rapidly walking towards the other end of the room, which leads to the kitchen area. She later revealed to me that she was planning on grabbing a knife. She had this horrified look on her face that I hadn't seen before. We looked at each other in nervous silence. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to make any further sounds. I finally decided to walk up to the sliding door and began opening it as slowly as possible. Peering into the darkness, I know I became the idiot who investigates the unknown, creepy noise without anything to protect myself with. When the door was finally open wide enough, I poked my head out and scanned the corridor, preparing for the worst. To my surprise, there was no one there, but what was strange was that the front door was still completely shut. We never heard the door close. My sister and I were obviously both extremely relieved, as we were almost certain that there was an intruder in the house. After this, I immediately went to ask my mom, who was situated in her bedroom at the other end of our house, if it was her or whether she had noticed anything. She told me that she thought my dad had come home as well, and she also heard someone opening the front door. Around half an hour later, which felt like an eternity at the time as we were still quite shaken from the incident, my dad finally arrived home and confirmed that he had not come home earlier. To this day, my sister and I still have no idea what happened that night. Story 10 was home with my infant twin daughters who were sound asleep. I was watching TV on the lower level of my tri-level home. On that level, the windows look out to the backyard, and as I got up to go to the kitchen, something caught my attention. What looks like a pale left arm is being subtly illuminated outside in the far right window, maybe 6 inches away from the window. It angled straight down as if to steady itself. My heart sank. Then I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. I ran up the few stairs to the main floor, grabbed my phone, and returned to see if it was still there. Nope. Nothing. I've never been remotely shaken like I was then. Called the non-emergency police, and when they arrived, walked to the backyard with the officers but didn't find anything. They were great and kept saying calling them was the right thing to do. It's what we here for, etc. Don't know what it was, but the image is seared into my memory. Story 11. I was maybe 10 years old, and I and my older brother were home alone. We were on the couch watching TV when we heard footsteps upstairs. We look at each other, puzzled, and my brother asks, "Are Mom and Dad home?" We soon shrug it off and go on with our night. Maybe an hour or two later, we're horsing around and chasing each other around the house. I run upstairs and my brother stays at the foot of the stairwell. Now, the upstairs consisted solely of one hallway, the master bedroom on one side, the room my brother and I shared on the other next to a bathroom, and then my sister's bedroom straight at the end. Well, as I'm standing there in the hallway with the lights off, I turn and see a white figure illuminated in my sister's doorway. I scream at the top of my lungs, and my brother flips the light switch downstairs and runs up to me. I looked away and looked back, and it was gone. We told our parents once they got home, and my dad went to investigate and came to the conclusion it was probably car headlights outside coming through the windows and reflecting off a full-body mirror my sister had near her doorway. I didn't buy that. I saw a figure, not some streaks of light, but I accepted the explanation because I just knew how my dad was. Years later, after my parents divorced, my dad moved his new wife and her kids into that house. My stepsister got what used to be my sister's room. My sister was old enough to have moved out at that point. When I told my step-siblings this story, my stepsister said that she had been hearing footsteps walking back and forth outside her room at night, and I legit got chills. Story 12. I was playing N64, Mom was at work, and my brother and sister were gone. I turned around for some reason to look at the hall that was being lit up by the bathroom light for some reason, and I saw, I think, a silhouette of a kid about my age, maybe 10 or so. My mom didn't know my brother would leave me home alone, which was cool by me. He had a pronounced cowlick in his hair. It was one of those things where I turned around for a second, saw it, didn't quite register it, and immediately turned back around to see if what I thought I saw was real. But it wasn't there anymore. This was before cell phones, so I just went to my neighbor's and hung out for a bit until my sister made it home. But growing up in that house, it was an older house. My brother, sister, and I always heard weird noises and saw some pretty weird shit. But up to that point, not like an actual ghost or anything. Just like dishes ending up on the floor in the middle of the night, lights and fans going on and off, doors closing and opening up right in front of us as we near them. Our dog would always randomly bark into dark areas, etc. It just keeps going. But I feel that all of this has a logical explanation, and on that night, my mind just played a weird trick on me. Honestly, we were never scared, that I can remember anyway. It was just an old house that shifted and caused weird shit to happen at weird times, I guess.